Hello and welcome to the Alpha Software Demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product here at Alpha Software. And today I am going to be doing a demonstration that's going to involve Alpha Anywhere's companion product, Alpha TransForm. I'm also here, of course, to answer any questions that you may have, and you could type those questions into the questions box or the chat window of the GoToWebinar control panel. Now, before we get started, because I am flying solo here today, if someone could just quickly type into the questions box or the chat window whether or not they can hear me and see my screen. They should see my mouse moving on the screen as well. Just want to make sure I'm broadcasting. Awesome. Thank you very much. Good. Well, let's get cracking. So, every week on Wednesday, we do talk about Alpha Anywhere, and we will be talking about Alpha Anywhere a little bit later on today. But I want to talk a little bit about Alpha TransForm. Coming up, we're going to be making some changes to the way that Alpha TransForm is licensed, which will make it, I think, much more attractive to people who are building solutions for other people as opposed to just end users. We'll have a usage-based and some other things that'll be rolling out shortly. But what I want to let you know is that if anyone is interested in Alpha TransForm, and I haven't even told you what it is for many people, but if you're interested in TransForm and you'd like to get a free license, just send me an email. Send an email over to tfservice@alphasoftware.com, and we can hook you up with, I can send you out a 1-year, 1-seat license to those of you who have joined us today so that you can play around with it yourself. So Alpha TransForm is a system that is used often by people who are doing inspections or people who are manufacturing or in a lot of different areas where they have got or have had in the past paper forms that they wanted to replace with digital forms. So on a manufacturing floor, for example, there is a ton of paperwork that goes along with quality compliance, material tracking, productions, production amounts, losses, things like that, incident reports, all of them different pieces of paper. They all have to get collected up and usually brought back to some back office where they're often rekeyed into a spreadsheet or something like that, and the data is available that way for reporting purposes for managers to help make decisions. Now, paper has got its problems, of course. You can lose it, you have to turn it in, handwriting can be illegible, and it lacks some of the really cool features that digital things give you, like the ability to take pictures and perform calculations and things like that. So we came up with a product called Alpha TransForm. You can find it at transform.alphasoftware.com. And you could think of it as a collection of two pieces. One is a web portal that we call TransForm Central, and the other is the mobile application that we call the TransForm Filler. So the way TransForm works is it divides everything up into what are called forms. So a form is think of it as a form as a data structure. And a form will have a corresponding form design that will go along with it. So this form design is the fields and how they're laid out on the screen. All of the data is kept behind the scenes in JSON format in a SQL database that we manage. And you can get to that data using the API. In fact, the API that comes with Alpha TransForm lets you do really everything that you could possibly imagine doing using either the mobile app or with TransForm Central. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in and just show you an example of it in action because I think it'll make more sense that way. We're just going to put together a quick form. We're going to collect some data, and then we're going to review the data on the form. The purpose of all of this is I want to show you how this works with Alpha Anywhere. But beforehand, we're going to start here so that I can give you a foundation on Alpha TransForm. All right, so let me head over to my PC. And here I am at transform.alphasoftware.com. I'm just going to go ahead and maximize that screen. All right. When you get here, this is sort of a starting point for TransForm. TransForm has got these 5 tabs up at the top. The Home tab you could really think of as a Settings tab, and in future incarnations, it's actually going to be renamed to Settings. But this is where you put in the name of your account. You can change your password. You can invite other people to use your account, and you can give them different roles so that they have different permissions and are able to access and do different things in the system. And it's also where you can get things like the API keys that you use for talking to Alpha Anywhere and other applications. We also have built in, this is kind of interesting, an integration with Zapier. And Zapier is a third-party service that connects to well over 1,000 well-named apps, and systems. So we have a native integration with Zapier. And if you wanted to use that, that's actually really easy to do. You just go into zapier.com, set up an account, and it'll ask you for an API key, which you get here. We won't go over Zapier today, but Zapier is pretty neat and worth checking out. It's for what it does for building out quick workflows and stuff. I think it's well worth investigating. All right, so we're going to start out by building a new form. So I'm going to go into the Designer tab, which is where we do that. And right now I'm looking at a form that I already had open. So I'm going to go back here to my form types. My account, I've got a whole bunch of form types that I've created here before. When you first start, of course, this list will be blank. Now to add a new form type, I just am going to click on that plus button up there. And here I've got a choice of selecting from a template. I'll show you what that looks like. And here are some of our predefined templates that you can use. Get that out of the way. But in this case, we're just going to build a blank template. So I can just show you a really basic example. So I'm going to say add a blank. And we're going to call this Wednesday, because today is Wednesday. And we'll give it a form ID also of Wednesday. What's the difference? Well, the form ID is how it's stored in the system underneath. The display name is how it looks to the user. If you wanted to write code that accessed a particular form, this is the one you'd use. You'd use this form ID right here. All right, so I'm going to pop over here. We're going to do input Quickstart Text. This is my favorite way of getting started building out a form. You'll see all I've got here is I've got a screen now that's got 3 panes in it. The pane on the right is where my app is going to appear as I build it. The pane on the left are the different types of field types that I can use to build out the form. And the page in the middle is where I'm actually building the form. And I can do that either by adding fields, like clicking fields here. And you'll see as I click them, they're added here and they're added here. But I can also just do it by typing. And what's cool about that is if you had like a preset list of questions, for example, maybe that you pulled out of a Word document, you could paste them right here and it would, like if I pasted in, last name, first name, email. So if I pasted that in, it would automatically create a whole bunch of fields for me, and then I could just go in and change their type to the correct type of field that you'll need. So that's a really simple form, and actually if I save that, I actually have something that I can now use right away. Be a pretty simple field form, but it's already deployed at that point. So upload to server, terrific. And I'm going to show that to you. Right now I could open this up on my phone, but I'm not going to bother with my phone. Instead, I'm going to use, TransForm also has a a web version of the application called the TransForm Filler. I've got it here, and I'm going to upload, I'm going to refresh my list of fields here, refresh forms, refresh definitions. I'm going to say add a blank form. And if I did it right, my Wednesday form should be down here in the W's. There it is, Wednesday. I'll click on that form. And if this is a phone, I'd just basically be tapping on it. And I can type in Dave Smith. And we'll say Dave at example.com. All right. With that filled in, I can upload the form. I can go back. I can and upload this form to the server. So I'm going to go ahead and upload that. Great. And now when I go back into TransForm Central and I pop into the management console, I can see, whoops, choose that. I can see my form. So I'm going to go into choose type. I'm going to just refresh that real quick. Here's my Wednesday form. And there's the information that I filled in. So this is a really, really fast way of putting together data entry applications. So let me show you another one that I've built, and it's the one that I'm going to use in the example with Alpha Anywhere. So we're going to go back into Designer, and I built a really simple one for deliveries. So imagine you are a delivery driver, and your job as you drop off packages is to take a picture of the package and mark the GPS location of the package so that there is a proof of delivery. So to do that, I designed a form which has basically the recipient's name up here at the top, and the address, and we have city, state, zip, the delivery date. We have a field for GPS capture. That's one of the built-in fields that you'll get with Alpha TransForm. So that's a good one to use. We also have an image capture one, which we've added in, and a signature one, which we've added in. So that was our whole form, and we've actually filled out a couple of records for this delivery form, and I want to show them to you right now. Go to Management Console, and I'm going to choose the delivery form. So that's up here. All right. So these are junk. I'm just going to delete these ones I put in recently. And you'll see when I first built this form, which is a little while ago, back in May, there's the picture, and there's the GPS capture location, and there's the signature, and there's a little note that they left. And we have another record here, which has got the same thing. All right. So as you can see, this is a pretty easy way to build data capture applications that allow you to capture rich data, including GPS and photos and things like that. But you're wondering, what does this have to do with Alpha Anywhere? So now I think would be a pretty good point to jump over and do it. Oh, but before we do, let's take one last thing that I would like to show you before we go over to Alpha Anywhere, and that is how the data is actually structured. Here in the Management Console, if you go into Form View, oops, move this out of the way. I'm going to go into View Contents. No, I'm not going to do either of these. Oh, Editable Field View is what I should have clicked on. If you do that and you go over here to JSON, it's actually going to show you the structure of how all of that information has been collected, including all of this gobbledygook here, which is actually the signature at the bottom. It's just been captured as a series of numbers. But you can see here is I've got a name field, an address field, a city field, state field, and so on. It's all captured in a JSON object where it is stored in a database. So I just want to point that out to you so that you'll know what you're doing when we please get to the other side of that. Someone said, can you please indicate again the email? Oh, the email. Yeah, sure. If you are interested in getting a license from us, send an email to tfservice, as in transform service. So tfservice@alphasoftware.com. I'd be happy to hook you up. All right, so let's go take a look at Alpha Anywhere. Okay, so in Alpha Anywhere, there's actually quite a few different ways that Alpha TransForm and Alpha Anywhere can talk together. And one way you could do it is using the API, but the other is just simply using a list control. So I'm going to start with a list control, but then we're going to go and take a look at the API, as well as a couple other features as well. So the first thing we're going to do is create a new web component. We've been doing these since the beginning of the year, so I think you're used to us doing these by now. We're going to add a new list control. Okay, that's good. And I'm going to double click on the list control. Now, in the past, we've used static data, we've used SQL data, we've used other data sources as well in our example. But if you'll notice, there is actually a data source simply called TransForm, and there is the TransForm data source. So I might have the API key still in my clipboard, might not. But when I choose it, I need to supply an API key. In fact, I'll just show you how to get that. I can do that just by going to the home of my transform.alphasoftware.com account. And then I can go and say get API key. And I have a selection as to how much permission I want to give my API key. Do I only want it to read data? Do I want it to read data and be able to create forms? Or should I allow it to delete things? So the all one, of course, will let you do everything. And I don't mind using that one here because this is a test account. And afterwards, I can simply delete the API key and it will disappear. So I'm going to grab an API key. It's generated one for me. And I can copy it to the clipboard. Thank you. And I'll pop into Alpha Anywhere. Now here's the API key. I'm just going to open up that field, paste that in. And once that's in, Alpha will be able to make a callback now to Alpha Transform, and it will be able to tell me which forms are in my account. So let's go ahead and click on that. And these are all the forms. There's that Wednesday form that I created earlier. And here's the delivery form that I just showed you and what the data was behind it. So I'm going to click on delivery form is the form that I want. It's going to ask what it should return. In other words, if I select something on the list, what value should it come back with? One kind of field that I like, because the unique field for one of these, whoops, say field, return field. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, no, we're good. All right, so I'm going to go over and we'll take a look at our fields here. Now, when I was setting up my form, I created both a display name and an underlying system name for the fields in my delivery form. I'll show those to you right now. If I go into Designer, and you'll see here the field is called name and the title is recipient name. So it'll say recipient name up at the top, and name is the one we did. I did not bother, and I should have, to name some of the other ones. So for example, this one here is simply called field 6, and the photo field is simply called field 8, and the signature field is called field 9. It probably would have been better to have renamed these photo and signature and stuff like that. So that's just a heads up, and it's something that I sometimes forget to do, but it's handy to make sure that you do name them properly. All right, that's no big deal. We're going to pop back over into Alpha Anywhere. And here are all of our fields. Now, by default, it just treats these as text. So if it says control type label, it means it's just going to print it out as a label or as text. But I happen to know that field 8 contains a picture. So I'm going to say that that is going to be a picture. So I'm going to do that as an image. And field 9 contains a signature, but as it turns out, I can leave it as label and still have it work. I'm not sure it has signature even as an option here, but it'll still work. All right. So I've set up the fields, but I haven't told it which fields I'd like to actually include in my list. So I still need to go into list layout, and let's put in name, and let's put in that photo field, and field 9, which was the signature field. And let's try field 6 and field 7. I don't know what those are, but we'll see. Okay, so I'm going to click OK on this. I'm going to give my UX a name. We're going to call this delivery list. All right, so we're going to pop back over here into working preview. And this will take a minute because it does need to make an API call back to the system, but it didn't take much more than a minute. So here it is. There's the name. There's my signature. There's the field 7, which I guess was latitude and longitude. Field 6 looks like it was delivery time. And there's the photo. Now I'd probably want to adjust that photo so that it is not, so that it displays better. In other words, I probably want to set a height and width on that in order to make it work. But I just wanted to show you that out of the box, the list control can read the data directly out of TransForm, which can be helpful. Okay, so I've got a question. Someone here said that they've lost my sound. I was wondering if anyone else has found that sound has been lost, because only one person has said that. Can you guys still hear me? Yep, the audio is still good. All right, so no, audio is still good. I'm just going to send them a quick text. Okay, thank you very much. We'll move that out of the way. Okay, so that's the real easy way to connect up and view data. And you can have the data, of course, displayed in different ways. You could put it into like a detail view and things like that. But another thing we can do is we can work with the data. In fact, not just the data, but all of the functions of TransForm using the API. And I'm going to show you how we do that. Built into Alpha Anywhere is a neat little feature. I'm just going to go ahead and close that, called the TransForm API Explorer. You may have seen it before. It's one of the many options here on the Tools menu. So I go to Tools and I move down here and I go down to the TransForm API Explorer and I click OK. And a dialog box appears. Now I've used this Explorer before, in fact, earlier today. So this is how I knew where to enter in my API key. I clicked API key and I pasted it in. And then it depends on which one you're using. Sometimes if you're using the beta version of TransForm, and that is an option when we go to, before new releases are out, we do create a separate version of our site, which sometimes you'll use. And here you can choose a different one. Likewise, if you have an on-premise version of TransForm, which is something we do for larger clients, you can choose that here. But typically, you're going to choose that as the regular TransForm service. All right. Over here on the left are all of the API endpoints that we have exposed. So as you can see, there's at least 60 different things that you can do with your account using these endpoints. Some of the more important ones are going to be things like entering in a new form instance, for example. So, or changing data in a form, or reading data from a form. So we fortunately have got a filtering system up here at the top. So if I say form, you'll see that I can see things like that. I can see get form definition. I can see form data, get just the fields in the form. Lots and lots of different things that you can do. One of the more interesting ones is you can actually use this to send out SMS messages and email messages to people who are in your system, and do that using send notification. So this is one of the API keys here. So here I'm just going to specify which user I'm going to send it to, and you do that based on the user's email in the system. So mine is my email, and my message here is, this is a test. And I'm going to go ahead, and I think that's all I need to fill in. Let's see if it complains. Click test. You have not set an API key. I have set an API key. All right, test. And you'll see here in the result window, I did not get an error. A message was sent, and right now my phone is just lit up with a message saying this is a test. So that's a kind of neat little functionality that you could add to your applications if you needed to ping specific users of TransForm. Some other things that you can do here is you can actually create and add users here as opposed to using the TransForm interface. You can automatically sign someone up for an account with their email address. Of course, they need to confirm it and log in to make it work. What else can you do? There are a lot of things that deal with dealing with form instances, so downloading, uploading, and things like that. And login. You can change passwords. So really anything that you can imagine doing. One thing that you can do here, and a feature that I forgot to point out before, is that you can add people into queues. So I'll explain the queue briefly. A queue is a collection of, in fact, why don't I just pop into Transform and show it the other way. And let me grab queues. Oh, I'm sorry, queue shows up only in the mobile app. So a queue is basically a system or a pile or a container that you could put tickets in that you haven't assigned to a specific user. So for example, let's say you had 10 people using your transform system, and 3 of them were, say, mechanics. And it was something mechanical that needed to be worked on. So it got put into the mechanics queue, and any one of the 3 people who was authorized to see the queue could then go in, pull out that ticket, and fill it out and submit it. So queues are kind of an interesting way of automating workflow and allowing work to be distributed among people on a team. And you can access those queues directly with the API as well, which really allows you to build out some really very powerful workflow solutions using Transform. All right, so we've gone over the API, we've gone over a bunch of stuff here. Let's take a look now at the onSubmit builder. So whenever a form is filled out and submitted, a series of actions can happen, and you can actually see them here. Define onSubmit events. And I have just one set up, and my action is whenever someone in the fills out a form called TT inspection, I want that data to be placed into a table called TT inspection, a MariaDB table, which is a SQL database. Now those are actually set up using JSON, and if you could see, that's really not something you'd want to code yourself. So the tools for building these onSubmit events right now are actually built into Alpha Anywhere, which is great because it also lets you change them. So I'm going to go into Alpha Anywhere and show you an example of that. So in Alpha Anywhere, down here in the Tools menu, if you go down to More and under Transform Utilities, you'll find something called the Builder for Transform onSubmit events. And I'm going to go ahead and choose that. Now, before I go any further, what I want to do is I want to fetch the definition from Transform Central of what my current actions are so that I have them all here and I don't overwrite them. I'm going to do that. I'm going to assume this key works. We'll see. Nope. Wrong key. All right, I should be able to paste in my key. There we go. Okay, and it shows that I have one action and it's called send to SQL. Now I can add additional actions to this. So every time a form is submitted, I can do a few things. I can check to see if it's the right kind of form, and based on that, I can do some other stuff. In this case, I could say I could send an email. I can send a report, and that's a report that you've created using the Alpha Anywhere report writer can be used. I can post data to a database or send it to a SQL database. I can post data to an API, is what I meant to say. I can send an SMS message. I can make some modifications to the fields before they go out. And I can dispatch and route forms, which means that when the form comes in, I can then take a look at the data that's there and maybe send the form to someone else so that they can complete filling it out. So you can see you can actually add quite a lot of workflow to your applications this way. So once you build all of these, basically all you need to do when you click OK here is not much, because it'll take all of the actions that you build using these builders and it'll feed it back to it automatically into the Alpha Transforms onSubmit action. All right, so we've been over onSubmit. The very last thing I want to talk about is our on-device storage. So let's pop over here. I'll show you what that's about. On-device storage applies not just to Transform, but also to your Cordova apps. It's a way of loading assets onto a phone or mobile device that might be used in the field and might be used offline. So I'm going to go over here to Tools, and we have a kind of a cool thing here on-device data builder for TransForm applications, which allows you to add items. So you can add a folder, you can add a file, you can add a SQLite database, or you can add a URL. And the URL basically points to the area where the item should be retrieved. When all of this is done, when you start adding items and files and things like that, like let's, for example, say that I wanted to include, oh, I don't know, if this were an inspection application, I might want to include a PDF that has got the repair manual for various types of devices so that I can access that right from within TransForm. So I would add these all here onto this on-device data builder, and I would basically save it. It would create a manifest file, not something you really need to worry about, but it happens behind the scenes, which describes all the files that are going to be there and where to get them. And it puts it up on a location in the cloud that Alpha TransForm then uses to pull that down from. Now we've set that up for you. You can use your own S3 properties for that, but it's something that's automatically included when you use Alpha TransForm. So those are the big integrations there. If there are any questions, now would be a good time to talk about them. Bring them up. I'm not seeing a lot today. That's okay. Well, I want to let you know that I believe Dion McCormick will be up next week, but we also have some webinars planned. We're going to be looking at the calendar control finally. Another thing we want to take a look at, although it's a little bit early days, is the form box builder, but another piece that you'd like to see. But if there is any particular demo or application that you would like to see or have us run through, just go ahead and send it in to us to guides, GUIDES, @alphasoftware.com. All right, that looks like it for questions. Hey, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you next week. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.